I never thought I'd reach a point in my life where the child I raised, loved, and protected would cut me off without a word. I'm 69 years old, living in a small brick house at the edge of a quiet southern neighborhood, and for most of her life, my granddaughter Maya was my sunrise. I held her during colic nights, braided her hair before school, tucked notes into her lunchbox, and somehow, somewhere, I became the villain in a story I didn't even know was being told. It started slowly, shorter visits, colder replies, messages left on read. Then one morning, my calls stopped ringing altogether. Just silence. The kind that sinks deep into your chest. Everyone kept telling me, kids grow distant. But this wasn't distance. This felt guided, shaped, controlled. And the one person with enough bitterness to twist Maya's heart was her mother, my daughter, Tasha. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth. And sometimes, truth has a way of finding its own road back home. I don't think there's a single moment you can point to, the moment your own grandchild starts drifting away from you. It doesn't feel like a one-day thing. It feels more like the slow dimming of a lamp you always trusted would burn bright. One day the glow is soft, then softer, and then you realize you're sitting in the dark, wondering when the light slipped out of the room. That's how it was with my granddaughter, Maya. For most of her life, she was the kind of child who burst into a room like sunshine. She'd run up my porch steps with her backpack bouncing and her hair in little twists I used to help her redo when they got messy from play. She'd shout, "Grandma, I'm home," even though it wasn't technically her home, just the place she felt safest. The place where she didn't have to be strong or cautious or quiet. But somewhere between her turning 16 and growing into a young woman I hardly recognized, something changed. Or maybe someone changed her. I still try to piece that part together. The shift was subtle at first. She stopped running up the porch steps. That's what I noticed first, the running. Or the lack of it. She walked instead, slow and guarded, glancing behind her as if someone was timing her. And when she reached my door, she didn't open it right away. She hesitated, wiped her palms on her jeans, then knocked like I was a stranger instead of the woman who'd raised her from birth. I'd open the door smiling, pretending I didn't feel the difference, and she'd step forward with a quiet, almost forced "Hey, Grandma." Her voice had lost that brightness she used to carry, without even trying. I remember one afternoon especially. The sun was low, that warm orange light spilling through the tall oak trees in my backyard. Maya stood in my kitchen with her backpack still on, not taking it off like she used to. She kept glancing at her phone, her shoulders stiff. "Baby," I said softly, "you don't have to rush off.
Sit down.
I made your favorite, honey cornbread." She forced a smile but didn't sit. "Mom said not to stay long," she murmured. "We have things."
Things. She never used to talk like that.
Maya used to describe everything, the smallest detail. What she ate at lunch, the kid in her class who always wore mismatched socks, the stray cat she named Captain because he sat like he owned the whole street. Maya was a storyteller just like me. But now her stories were shrinking into silence. I didn't want to pry, so I just stood there stirring the pot of beans on the stove, glancing over every so often. She kept tapping her fingers against her thigh, a rhythm born from nervousness, not boredom. Then she'd catch herself doing it and clasp her hands together. Another thing I noticed, she repeated certain lines word for word. Not things teenagers normally say, but things that sounded polished, practiced. "Mom says I need to be more focused right now. Mom says my schedule is too tight. Mom says I shouldn't overwhelm myself." Every time I heard her say, "Mom says," something inside me tightened. Not because I had a problem with her mother. Lord knows I tried my best raising Tasha, even when her temper was sharp and her heart was complicated. But because Maya didn't talk like someone who agreed, she talked like someone who was scared to disagree. One evening, she came by after school, wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. New, expensive. The kind of thing I'd never seen her mother buy unless she was trying to prove something. How long can you stay today? I asked gently. Her eyes darted to her phone before she answered. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. She said it like she was reciting a rule. I handed her a plate with a slice of peach cobbler. She loved peach cobbler, my peach cobbler anyway, but she didn't even take a bite. She just stared at her phone, her shoulders rigid. Maya, I said quietly, sweetheart, talk to me. She blinked hard, as if she was fighting back tears or trying to stop them before they could expose her. Then she whispered, Grandma, I can't stay. I'm sorry. She didn't even hug me when she left. She used to hug me tight, with her whole body, like she never wanted to let go. But now the air between us felt cold and wide. I watched her walk to the car, where her mother waited. Tasha didn't look at me. She never did anymore. She just stared ahead, one hand gripping the steering wheel like she was bracing herself against something. When Maya climbed in, I saw Tasha lean toward her, lips moving quickly, sharply. Maya nodded without lifting her head. Then the car pulled away. I stood on my porch until the taillights disappeared down the road. The next few visits were shorter. 2 minutes. 1 minute. Sometimes she just handed me something, mail, a school paper, before turning back toward the car. She never explained, never asked how I was doing. I suddenly became the place she visited, not the person she loved. And then the visits stopped altogether. At first, I thought she was busy. School, activities, teenage life, those things take up time. But a week passed. Then 2. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts never got a reply. I tried not to panic. I tried to tell myself she was just adjusting to a new phase of life. But deep down, I knew better. There was something in her eyes that last day I saw her. Something like guilt, or fear, or both. I kept myself busy around the house, watering my plants, reorganizing the linen closet, sorting through old family photos in hopes that maybe I'd distract myself long enough for her to call. But the silence became its own kind of ache. One morning, I decided to send her a birthday card. Simple, sweet, handwritten. I added a little sticker of a sunflower in the corner because she used to love sunflowers when she was little. I slipped in $20 like I always did and mailed it with a small prayer tucked into the envelope. A week later, my mail carrier, a sweet older man named Leonard, knocked on my door. "Morning, Miss Briggs," he said with a gentle frown. "Got something for you." He held out an envelope. My envelope. The birthday card I had sent to Maya, returned to sender. Unopened. I felt something drop inside me, like a stone sinking through deep water. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world felt too still.
Too quiet.
I stared at her name written in my handwriting, my careful cursive, the loops I always took pride in. I touched the little sunflower sticker with my thumb, feeling its smooth edge. She didn't open it? I whispered, more to myself than to Leonard. "No, ma'am," he said softly. "Looks like it never made it to her hands. Or someone sent it back." Someone. That word echoed in my chest. Tasha. It was exactly the kind of thing she'd do, cut the thread between us without a second thought. My heart tightened, not with anger, but with something far heavier, the kind of sadness that comes when love hits a wall you didn't know was being built brick by brick. Leonard gave me a sympathetic nod before walking back down the steps. I closed the door slowly, the envelope trembling in my hands. I walked to my kitchen table, the same wooden table where I once helped Maya do homework, where she drew pictures of us holding hands, where she told me her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. I sat down and stared at the returned envelope for a long time. Unopened. Unwanted. I turned it over, and that's when I noticed something in the corner of the envelope. A faint crease. Like someone had gripped it too tightly. Like someone had hesitated before sending it back. But the truth came a moment later, simple, sharp, undeniable. Maya didn't send this back. Her mother did. And for the first time, a question settled deep in my bones, sending a chill through me. What exactly was Tasha telling her? I pressed the envelope flat on the table, exhaled slowly, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, but a rising sense of knowing. Something wasn't just wrong, something was being hidden. And that quiet, dangerous thought grew heavier with each passing second. Then, almost gently, almost cruelly, the realization landed. If Maya never saw this card, what else had she never seen? I rested my fingertips on the unopened envelope, and in that still moment, I felt the first real crack form in the story I thought I understood. A crack wide enough to pull me into the truth I never asked for, but now had no choice but to face. I looked down at the envelope one more time and saw the postal stamp that confirmed everything. The card had been returned the very same day it was delivered. Someone never even let it reach her hands. Someone made sure of it. And my heart, trembling, knew exactly who. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after Leonard left, the return birthday envelope lying flat in front of me, like a quiet accusation. I kept tracing my finger over the neat little sunflower sticker I'd placed on the back, remembering how Maya used to peel those stickers off her notebooks and stick them to her cheeks just to make me laugh. She used to say, "Grandma, look, I'm a garden." And I'd pretend to water her with a spoon, both of us laughing until our stomachs hurt. Now the sticker felt like a reminder of everything I was slowly losing. I finally picked up my phone. I didn't want to call Tasha. Lord knows, conversations with her were like walking barefoot over broken glass. But I needed answers, and she was the only person who could give them. Or at least the person who would claim she already had them. The line rang only once before she picked up.
"What?" she snapped.
No greeting. No pause. No patience. "It's me," I said softly. "I just wanted to ask if Maya got her birthday card. It was returned to me unopened, and—" "She's too busy," Tasha cut in. "She doesn't have time for childish obligations right now." Childish obligations. That phrase sat in the air between us like a bad smell. Childish. I repeated quietly. It was just a card. I wanted her to know I was thinking about her on her birthday. "She knows," Tasha said, her voice dripping with irritation. "She doesn't need you smothering her with outdated traditions." Smothering. Outdated. Childish. Words she lined up like darts and threw one by one. I swallowed the sting. "Tasha, sweetheart, I'm not trying to pressure her. I haven't heard from her. I'm worried." There was a pause. A dangerous, heavy pause. Then she said, "Maya doesn't need your worry. She needs space. So, do me a favor, stop calling. She has a full life now." And then click. The call ended.
Not even a goodbye.
I kept staring at my phone, listening to the emptiness on the other end as if waiting for her voice to come back and say, "I didn't mean that, Mama." But it didn't come back. It never does with Tasha. I held the phone to my chest and closed my eyes. I wasn't angry. I was tired. A tiredness that reached places deep inside me. Places that only years of love and disappointment can carve out. For a moment, I wondered if I should listen. Stop calling. Stop trying. Let Maya live her full life, as Tasha put it. But then I thought of those handwritten journal pages I still kept in a drawer, pages covered in little hearts, crooked sentences, and declarations of love only a child can write. "Grandma, you are my favorite person in the world. Grandma, thank you for making me feel safe. I love living with you because you never yell."
No.
I couldn't just stand back. Not yet. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to water the ferns on my porch, the same ones Maya helped me plant when she was 10. She used to name them, whispering little pep talks to the leaves like they were shy students on the first day of school. I was misting the leaves when I heard my neighbor, Miss Eloise, calling from across the picket fence. "Afternoon, Miss Briggs," she said with a smile too wide for her small frame. "I saw your granddaughter yesterday." My heart lifted like a bird startled into flight. "You did? Where?" "Oh, down at the mall. she said, waving her hand casually. She was with a group of friends, shopping bags in both hands, laughing away. I felt the breath leave my body in one slow stream. The same day I called asking about the card. The same day Tasha told me she was too busy. The same day I was told I should give her space. I kept my voice steady. Did she look okay? Oh yes, Eloise said. She looked happy. Healthy. Didn't see her mother anywhere near her, though. That detail hit me harder than I expected. So she was allowed to go out. Allowed to laugh. Allowed to shop. Allowed to live her life.
Just not with me.
I smiled politely and thanked Eloise, but inside my heart was folding into itself. When she walked back to her porch, I stood there with the watering can in my hand, the weight of it suddenly too heavy. It wasn't that Maya was busy. It wasn't that she needed space. Someone had put a wall around her and made sure I was on the other side of it. That evening, I sat in my living room, the sun dipping low through the curtains, turning the whole room gold. I looked around at the quiet space where Maya's presence used to fill every corner, her books on the coffee table, her sneakers kicked off near the door, her laughter bouncing off the walls. I picked up my phone again. I stared at her name in my contacts for almost a minute. Then, with a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, I pressed call. It rang once.
Twice.
3 times. Then a recorded voice came through the speaker. This number is no longer accepting calls from you. I felt every muscle in my chest tighten. I pulled the phone away and stared at it. That had never happened before. Not in all her life. Not once. I tried again. This time, it cut straight to voicemail. I didn't need a third try. I knew what had happened. Not by accident. Not by technical glitch. Not because Maya decided on her own to set that boundary.
She had been blocked.
By her mother. Maybe even while Maya wasn't looking. The realization came like a soft blow, silent but bruising. My number.
Blocked.
By the child I raised. Or by the woman who always resented that I raised her. I sat there for a long time, phone in my lap, feeling the room settle around me. The refrigerator humming softly in the background. The distant sound of a car door closing. Life moving forward outside my home while mine seemed to pause right in the middle of a breath. I slid my hand across the couch cushion beside me, the spot where Maya used to curl up under my arm during movie nights. I could still picture her head on my shoulder, her small fingers gripping my sleeve. How could this happen? I whispered into the quiet. I didn't expect an answer. But something in the silence answered anyway. This didn't happen on its own. This was planned. This was placed. This was shaped by someone who wanted it. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to breathe through the ache. The betrayal wasn't that she didn't call. It wasn't even that she didn't open my card. The betrayal was that someone else had stepped into the space between us and made sure I stayed out. And as I sat there in the fading light, the truth settled deep inside me like a stone. Someone wanted my granddaughter to forget me. Someone wanted me erased. The question wasn't who. I already knew. The question was why. And that answer was going to change everything. I picked up my phone one more time, trying her number out of sheer hope, and the line didn't even ring. A message flashed instantly. Unable to complete call. This number has blocked you. My granddaughter was gone from me. Not by her choice, but by someone else's hand. And that's when the hurt gave way to something quieter. Not anger. Not revenge. Something steadier. A determination to find out the truth. Before I lost her for good. I didn't sleep the night I realized Maya had blocked my number. I lay in bed listening to the old house breathe, its quiet pops, its settling wood, the distant hum of the lake wind brushing against the siding. Normally, those sounds feel comforting, like being wrapped in the memory of all the years I spent raising her here. But that night, every sound felt like a reminder of the emptiness I was trying not to feel. I got up before sunrise, unable to stay still another minute. The house was dim and cool, just a sliver of blue morning light slipping through the blinds. I made myself a cup of tea, hibiscus, her favorite, and stood there staring at the steam rising from the mug. It looked like a prayer drifting upward, one that didn't quite know where to land. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to reach a child who had been pushed so far away from me. But I knew one thing. Sitting still wouldn't fix anything. So I walked down the hallway to her old room. She hadn't lived with me full-time in years, but I kept her room exactly as she left it. The pale yellow walls, the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, the little bookshelf with her favorite chapter books that I used to read aloud while she colored beside me. Nothing had been touched. For a moment, standing in the doorway, I felt her there. Imagine her small feet running across the room, her high ponytail bouncing as she threw herself into my arms. The memory was so vivid it almost hurt. I pushed the door fully open and stepped inside. Let me straighten this up, I murmured to myself, though the room didn't need straightening. I needed something to do with my hands, something to anchor me so I wouldn't drift into heartbreak again. I dusted the dresser, folded the extra blanket she kept on her chair, smoothed the bedsheet, rearranged the books on her shelf the way she used to, biggest to smallest. I opened a drawer and found the colored pencils she left behind, some worn down to nubs from the drawings she made for me. That's when something caught my eye. A thin crack in the floorboard, near the foot of her bed. I'd never noticed it before, not in all the years she lived with me. The floor was old, original to the house, full of tiny quirks and secrets. But this crack looked different. Newer. Like someone had pried the board up and put it back in place. I crouched slowly, my knees complaining the whole way, and ran my fingers along the grain of the wood. It lifted, just barely, when I pressed. My heart thumped once. Hard. Maya, what were you hiding? I whispered. I slid my nails under the edge and lifted the board carefully. It came up with a soft creak, revealing a small hollow space beneath it. Inside was a shoebox. A plain, old, beat-up shoebox with faded corners and a single sticker on top, a little sunflower. The same kind Maya loved as a child. I touched the box gently. Dust coated the lid, but not thickly. She hadn't placed it there too long ago. Maybe a few years. Maybe less. With trembling hands, I lifted it out and sat cross-legged on the floor, the box resting in my lap. The room felt still, sacred, as if it knew this was a moment I wasn't meant to rush. I opened the lid. Inside lay a small, pink journal.
Worn.
Bent at the edges. A little pen mark on the corner where she must have pressed too hard. The kind of journal little girls carry everywhere, filled with secrets, drawings, feelings too big to say out loud. My breath caught in my throat. I knew this journal. I'd bought it for her when she was 8. She'd insisted it needed a lock because real secrets need protection, but she lost the tiny key 2 days later and cried about it overnight. I remembered helping her open it by gently lifting the clasp with a bobby pin. She'd laughed when she learned she didn't need magic to keep her secret safe. I ran my finger over the little silver heart on the cover. Maya's journal. She had written in purple marker. I hesitated. Part of me felt like opening it was a violation. These were pieces of her heart, her fears, her hopes. Things she trusted only to paper when she couldn't trust the people around her. But then I thought of the unopened birthday card, the blocked number, the silence forced between us. And I thought of the way she once looked at me, like I was her home. Now she looked at me like a stranger.
I needed to understand why.
I opened the journal. The first page hit me so hard my hand shook. I love Grandma because she always listens. Written in that shaky little girl handwriting, the letters uneven and round. I turned the page. Grandma makes me feel safe. When Mom yells, Grandma holds me and tells me I'm okay. My eyes stung immediately. Another page. Grandma cooks cornbread and tells the best stories. I want to be like her when I grow up. I pressed my fingertips to the words, feeling the grooves where her pen had pressed into the page. It was like touching her younger self, the version of her before the world complicated everything. I read page after page, drawings of us holding hands, memories of days at the park, her fear of thunderstorms, her pride in learning how to ride a bike. Every line was filled with warmth, innocence, and love. Then I turned to a page that made my breath hitch. The handwriting was shaky, smaller, like she'd written it while afraid. Mom says Grandma doesn't love me, but I know she's lying. I felt my whole chest tighten. There it was. Not recent, not new, not a sudden shift. This had been happening years ago. Tasha planting seeds, whispering doubts, feeding her stories I never knew about, trying to rewrite the truth because she couldn't control the bond Maya and I shared. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle like dust around me. How many lies had she planted since then? How much distance had been built long before I even noticed? I kept turning the pages, each one a mixture of drawings and confessions. Some were sweet, some broke me quietly, some made me want to reach back through time and hold the little girl who wrote them. Then I reached the final section of the journal, a part I'd never seen before, a page that looked like it was written years later, maybe when Maya was 11 or 12. Her handwriting had changed, more mature, more confident, but the emotion behind it was the same. At the top of the page she had written, "If I ever forget who she really is." My heart thudded. I read the next line. "Remind me." I pressed my hand to my mouth. It felt like the room disappeared around me for a moment. All the quiet noise of the house faded. My breathing grew unsteady. She had known, even then, that someone might try to pull her away from me. She had wanted protection from her own mother's lies. She had wanted a reminder of the truth. The same truth she no longer seemed to remember. I stared at those words for a long time, the ink slightly faded but still strong enough to reach me across the years. If I ever forget who she really is, remind me. A request from a little girl who didn't know life would twist her so far away. A request from the granddaughter I had raised in my arms. A request I had no intention of ignoring. My hands trembled as I closed the journal and held it against my chest. It felt warm, almost alive, like her voice had been resting inside it all these years waiting for me to hear it again. I looked around her old room, the bed she used to jump on, the bookshelf she built with me one summer, the windowsill where she'd lined up her seashell collection. Everything around me was a reminder of who she was before the lies took root. Tasha had spent years building distance, but Maya had once given me the key to close it. A sentence she never meant as prophecy but now felt like a lifeline. If I ever forget who she really is, remind me. And I would. Quietly.
Gently.
Without anger. Without revenge. With truth. The truth of who she really was. The truth of who I really was. The truth Tasha had tried so hard to erase. I lifted the journal to the light, letting the sun touch its pages for the first time in years. And that's when I noticed something else. Something tucked into the very back cover. Something I hadn't seen before. A folded slip of paper, with one more message written on it. A message that would change everything. The last page of the journal, written in her slightly older handwriting, ended with the same haunting line, underlined twice. If I ever forget who she really is, remind me. The paper in the back felt heavier suddenly, almost calling out to me. And as I reached for it, heart pounding, I knew. This wasn't just a journal. This was the beginning of the truth. I stayed on the floor of Maya's old room longer than I meant to, the journal resting in my lap like a heartbeat I hadn't heard in years. That last line, "If I ever forget who she really is, remind me," echoed inside my chest, soft at first, then growing louder with every breath. When I finally stood up, my knees cracked loudly in the quiet room, reminding me that time moves forward even when we feel stuck in one moment. I held the journal against me as I walked down the hallway. The house felt unfamiliar in a way it never had before, like it was waiting, holding its breath along with me. Maybe because it sensed what I was about to do. Something that required more courage than anger. Something that needed truth, not confrontation. I set the journal on the kitchen table, right beside the unopened birthday card, the sunflower sticker still shining faintly. 2 pieces of Maya's life, one rejected, one forgotten, now resting side by side. I made myself a fresh cup of tea, though I didn't drink much of it. My hands were too restless, my thoughts too loud. I kept rereading her words in my mind, picturing her small hand gripping that purple marker, imagining the look on her face as she wrote such a heavy sentence at such a young age. She knew, even back then, she knew her mother's voice could drown out her own. I took a slow breath and opened a drawer near the stove. Inside was a pack of small, plain brown mailing envelopes. I had bought them in bulk years ago because Maya and I used to send letters back and forth for fun, even though we lived 5 miles apart. She used to call it old-fashioned texting. I picked up one of the envelopes and gently tucked the journal inside. It barely fit, but the snugness felt right, like protection.
Safety.
Memory being held in place. Then I sat down with a sheet of paper, the kind I always used for writing notes to her in her lunchbox. I wrote just one line, carefully, slowly. Your handwriting never lied to me. I stared at the sentence for a long time, letting its weight settle. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even a plea. It was simply a reminder. A bridge back to who she had been before the lies crept in. I folded the note and slid it between the first and second pages of the journal, knowing she would see it before she saw anything else. Then I sealed the envelope, pressing the edges down firmly, as if sealing something sacred. There was no anger inside me. Not anymore. Just quiet purpose. A stillness that felt like strength. By the time the sun was high, I grabbed my keys and stepped out onto the porch. The air was crisp, the kind of cool that carries the scent of lake water and pine. Birds called to each other in the trees, unaware of the small storm moving through my chest. I drove to the post office in town, the building with faded blue paint and a crooked American flag that never quite stayed fully unfurled. The clerk behind the counter, a kind young man named Julian who'd sorted my mail for years, smiled as I approached. "Morning, Miss Briggs," he said gently. "What can I help you with today?" I placed the sealed envelope on the counter. "I need this sent priority. And I need confirmation when it's delivered. Please." He nodded and took the envelope carefully, as though he sensed something fragile inside. "What's the address?" he asked. I handed him a slip of paper with Maya's college mailbox information. I'd looked it up earlier, after sitting with the journal long enough to gather the courage. "Sending something special?" he asked kindly. "Yes," I said softly. "Something long overdue." He typed in the address, printed a label, and pressed it onto the envelope with the kind of care you don't often see in people anymore. Then he handed me a receipt with a tracking number and placed the package in the outgoing bin. It felt like watching a piece of myself being mailed away. As I stepped outside, the sun hit my face, warm and steady. I closed my eyes and let the light sit there for a moment, as if giving me reassurance. Maya didn't need to hear my voice right now. She needed to hear hers. Her younger voice. The voice untouched by manipulation. I got back in my car and drove home slowly, my fingers brushing over the tracking receipt every few minutes, grounding myself. I knew better than to expect a miracle. I knew better than to expect an instant response. But I also knew this. Truth doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just sleeps. Sometimes it needs to be woken up. When I reached home, I placed the receipt on my kitchen counter and sat on the couch, journal-shaped emptiness in my hands. My home was quiet, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt expectant. Later that afternoon, as the sky shifted to a soft blue-gray, I pulled out one of Maya's old drawings from a drawer. It was a picture of the two of us, hand in hand, both smiling with giant cartoon eyes. Above us, she'd written, "Me and Grandma forever." I traced her handwriting with my finger. She drew that when she was 8, around the time she'd hidden that journal. A time when her loyalty to me was louder than any lie her mother could whisper. A time she might have forgotten. My throat tightened, but not with sorrow. With determination. As the evening settled, I made myself a small dinner and turned on the lamp near the window. The soft amber glow spread across the room, familiar and comforting. I tried to read a book, but my eyes kept drifting toward the receipt on the counter. So much of love, real love, is the willingness to be patient, even when patience hurts. When night arrived, I slept lightly, waking often, my mind returning to that journal inside a brown envelope moving its way toward her. By morning, I checked the tracking number before I even poured my tea. In transit. I checked again at noon. Out for delivery. My hand trembled slightly as I held my phone, watching that small line of text. It felt absurd that a simple digital message could carry so much weight. But that's how fragile the ties felt now, resting on the edge of a screen. By late afternoon, the sky darkened with a soft rain. The house smelled like damp wood and lavender, the scent I kept in a little diffuser near the hallway. I stood at the window, watching droplets gather on the glass, each one streaking downward like tiny trails of thought. Then, at 5:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call, not a message, a notification from the postal service. I opened it slowly, breath held tight, heart tapping inside my ribcage. Delivery confirmed. Received by Maya. I stared at those words.
Once. Twice.
3 times. She had it. In her hands. Not intercepted. Not returned. Not hidden. The truth had reached her. I sat down at the kitchen table, my fingers lightly touching the screen as if afraid to smudge the words. My breath came slow, steady. But my heart felt like it was waking up after a long winter. I imagined her opening the package, her seeing that pink journal, her reading her own handwriting, her younger self whispering the truth back to her. Did she gasp? Did her hands shake? Did she cry? Did she smile? I didn't know. And that not knowing, it was somehow both beautiful and terrifying. I waited. Another hour. Then 2. No call. No message. No knock on the door. Just quiet. A thick, expectant quiet. The kind of quiet that means something is shifting, but you're not allowed to see the shift yet. I walked to the back porch and sat on the wooden steps, watching the rain lighten into a gentle mist. The lake glimmered under the cloudy sky, silver and calm. The trees swayed from side to side, a soft rhythm like breathing. I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and whispered into the air. Come home to yourself first, baby. Then come find me. Another hour passed. Still no response. But I didn't feel abandoned anymore. I felt close. Closer to her than I had felt in months. Because now she had the truth. Now she had her truth. Now she could see what had been hidden behind someone else's voice. And quiet truth has a way of echoing louder than lies. As night settled in, I finally stood up and went inside, turning on the lamp in the living room, the same lamp she used to read under as a child. Its warm glow filled the house, gentle and familiar. I sat in my rocking chair and exhaled deeply. The kind of exhale that clears a space inside you. My last thought before sleep found me was simple.
She knows now.
The next morning, I checked the tracking screen again and saw a final update.
Delivered.
Received by Maya. No message. No call. No anything. Just silence. A silence that felt like a held breath. Something was coming. 2 days passed after the journal arrived in Maya's hands. 2 long, quiet days where the air in my home seemed to hold its breath with me. I moved slowly through each hour, watering my plants, folding laundry I had no real need to fold, rearranging the books on the shelf not because they needed arranging, but because I needed something to keep my hands busy. My mind wasn't still, though. Not for a moment. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, whether from the weather app, the county newsletter, or a pharmacy reminder, my heart jumped like it had been startled awake. And every time I saw it wasn't her, I felt my chest ease and ache at the same time. I didn't expect a message from her right away. Not after everything that had been done to her heart. Not after the kind of quiet war Tasha had waged for years. Healing doesn't arrive the moment truth does. Sometimes it hesitates at the door, cautious, unsure. Still, I hoped. On the second afternoon, just as the sun started lowering itself behind the line of pine trees behind my house, my phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it until I noticed it wasn't a text. It wasn't a call from a number I recognized.
It was a voicemail.
From a number affiliated with the university. My breath caught. I tapped to play it. A warm, calm voice filled the room. A woman's voice. Soft but steady, the kind of tone therapists use when navigating delicate territory. "Hello, Mrs. Briggs," she began. "My name is Caroline Brooks. I'm a counselor at Evergreen University. I'm reaching out because your granddaughter, Maya, requested an appointment today regarding family estrangement." I gripped the edge of my counter, my legs suddenly unsure beneath me. The counselor continued. She asked for guidance on understanding emotional distance created by parental manipulation. She specifically asked how to reconcile memories from childhood with conflicting narratives she's been told more recently. I closed my eyes, a whisper of relief washing over me. So gentle, so unexpected, it almost brought me to my knees. Maya had seen it. The truth had reached her. And it didn't run off her like water. It stayed. It spoke. It asked questions. The counselor went on. "I can't share much unless she gives written permission, but I wanted to let you know, because she mentioned wanting to reconnect with someone she feels she lost. She didn't say your name, but she didn't have to." The voicemail ended with contact information and a soft final line. "Whatever was hidden, she's beginning to see it." I stood there, the phone still in my hand, the room suddenly feeling too quiet, too full of something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time.
Hope.
Real, trembling hope. I sank into my rocking chair, the one by the window where I used to read fairy tales to her before bed. The cushions still wore the faintest hint of vanilla lotion, hers, not mine. I pressed my palm to the armrest, remembering how she once crawled into this very chair after a nightmare, curling against me like she was a part of my own heartbeat. Family estrangement caused by parental manipulation. Hearing those words from a professional, someone objective, made everything ring clearer. Maya hadn't pulled away because she wanted distance. She'd been led away, shepherded into distrust, fed a story that made me look like a burden, a villain, an outdated relic she didn't need. But the journal had broken something open. Her own words, her own memories had become louder than the lies. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, watching the faint glow of the last daylight catch the edges of the glow-in-the-dark stars she once stuck up there during a sleepover. "They're my little sky," she'd told me. "You're my real one," I'd replied. My throat tightened. I didn't know what the counselor had said to her. I didn't know what Maya was thinking in this moment, whether she was confused, hurt, angry, ashamed, overwhelmed. Maybe all at once. Maybe none of those things yet. But she'd taken a step toward clarity. She had reached for truth. And truth has a way of pulling forward everything hidden behind it. As the evening deepened, I felt myself drift into a long moment of reflection. I thought about Tasha, my daughter, who never quite forgave life for not handing her the ease she felt she deserved. She carried resentment like perfume, spraying it in every room she entered. I'd spent years trying to soften her anger, trying to raise love where bitterness grew. But some wounds refuse healing when the person holding them believes they benefit from the pain. Her jealousy of the bond between Maya and me, it had been a quiet thread running through their lives for years. But only now did I understand how deeply she'd pulled that thread, knotting it into something cruel. For the first time, I felt anger rise, not loud, not wild, but steady. A calm anger. The kind that coats the edges of your heart and clarifies everything. Not because I wanted revenge against my daughter, but because she had stolen something precious from a child. She'd poisoned love. And now that poison was coming undone. The next day, I tried to keep myself busy, sweeping the porch, pruning the ferns, wiping down the counters. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Maya. What was she doing now? Was she rereading the journal? Talking to the counselor again? Confronting her mother? Crying? Or simply sitting with everything, letting it settle the way heavy truths often must? I wished I could hold her, not to pull her close, but to steady her. To tell her that confusion is normal, that love doesn't disappear, it only gets covered. By late afternoon, the tracking email still sat pinned at the top of my inbox like a reminder. Delivered. Received by Maya. I made a simple dinner, ate slowly, walked through the house as if checking it for cracks. Everything felt fragile and full all at once. Then night came. A quiet, heavy night. The kind that seems to lean into the windows and wait. I sat in my rocking chair again, listening to the soft tick of the grandfather clock. Maya used to think it had a heartbeat. The shadows stretched long across the floor. A cool breeze slipped under the doorframe, brushing my ankles like a small ghost of memory. I was just beginning to doze off when I felt a sudden jolt, like someone calling my name from far away. Not a sound, a feeling, a shift in the air, as if the world outside my walls had moved closer. I opened my eyes. The clock read 5:57 a.m. Morning light had barely begun to rise. Then, knock.
Soft.
Gentle. Almost scared. Like someone asking permission to enter their own story again. I froze, breath suspended. I listened. Knock. Just 2 taps. Quiet enough to be polite. Soft enough to be tender. Close enough to make my heart race, so hard I felt it in my fingertips. No one knocks on my door at sunrise. No one except one person. I reached for the armrest, the room spinning slightly, with a sudden rush of adrenaline and hope. My hands trembled as I stood. I took a step toward the door. Then another. Each one filled with something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Possibility. The light beyond the window grew a shade brighter, and the knocking stopped. But the silence that followed, it wasn't empty. It was full of truth finally catching up, full of a heart finding its way back. I placed my hand on the doorknob. Cliffhanger. At sunrise, someone was standing on my porch, knocking softly. And I didn't need a voice to tell me who. I already knew. When I finally opened that door, the sunrise poured in like it had been waiting for this moment just as long as I had. And there she was, my Maya, standing on my porch in an oversized hoodie, her curls pulled back in a messy bun, eyes swollen from crying. She looked so much like the little girl who used to run across my yard barefoot, holding out dandelions like they were bouquets. Except now she held something else against her chest. The pink journal.
Clutched like a lifeline.
Held like a truth she wasn't ready to speak. For a long heartbeat, we just stood there, my hand on the knob, her on the morning cold boards of my porch. She wasn't breathing steady. Her whole body quivered like she was afraid I might not open that door all the way. Like she feared she'd come too late. "Hi, Grandma," her voice cracked, the words barely forming. And it broke me, not in the way pain breaks a person, but in the way relief does. I stepped aside without a word and gently motioned her in. She walked through, slow and cautious, like she was entering a sacred place. In some ways, maybe she was. This house had held her laughter, her first drawings, her fears whispered into my chest at night. It had been her refuge before life grew loud and complicated. She kept wiping her face with the back of one hand, holding the journal with the other. When she finally sat on my sofa, the same spot where she used to curl up for after-school cartoons. She let out a breath that seemed to carry years of confusion. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know what was real anymore." I sat across from her, not too close, just enough to show I was here. Present. Steady. "You're here now," I said softly. "That's what matters." That did it. The tears came harder. She pressed the journal to her mouth, trying to keep the sob from breaking the room. I didn't rush her. Grief, regret, realization. They need time to settle. They need space to breathe. I'd waited this long. I could wait a little longer. Finally, she lowered the journal and looked at me with eyes that seemed to carry both the child I raised and the young woman she'd become. "Grandma, she lied to me," she said, voice trembling. "Mom, she told me things. She made me believe you didn't want me around. That you only cared when people were watching. That you were disappointed in me." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the truth land without flinching. It hurt, sure. But I'd known. Deep down, I'd known Tasha's insecurities had shaped the way she tried to shape her daughter. "She needed you to need her," I murmured. "And people will do strange things when they fear losing love." Maya looked down at the journal again and traced a fingertip over a sticker she'd put on it years ago, some faded cartoon butterfly with peeling wings. "I read everything," she said. "I read all the pages. I forgot so much. I didn't remember how much you meant to me, or how much I loved being here." Her voice weakened again. "She made it sound wrong to love you." A quiet ache filled my chest. Not bitterness. Not anger. Something deeper. Something that belonged to the kind of wounds you don't scream over. You just carry until they understand they no longer own you. "You were a child," I said. "You trusted the voice you heard most." "I shouldn't have," she whispered. "No," I said gently. "That's not the lesson here. The lesson is that you found your own voice again." She swallowed hard. And then, as if the weight finally overwhelmed her, she leaned forward and rested her head in her hands. "I blocked your number," she said through her fingers. "I blocked you and told myself not to think about it. But every time I pushed the thought away, it felt wrong. Like I was losing something important. Something that felt like home." A soft smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't joy. It was recognition of a bond stretched, but not broken. "You can't lose what's rooted in love," I said quietly. "It just gets buried sometimes." The room fell still.
Warm. Full.
Healing. After a moment, she looked up again, eyes puffy but clearer. "Grandma, can you tell me what happened between you and Mom? The truth. All of it." I nodded, slowly, letting the weight of the request settle. We talked for a long time, not in a rush, not with anger, just with honesty. I told her about the years Tasha struggled with jealousy, the resentment she carried every time she compared our bond to the one she wished she'd had with me. I admitted the mistakes I'd made raising her mother, the gaps between us neither of us had filled properly. Maya listened to every word like she was stitching two halves of her heart back together. At one point, she leaned back, wiped her face, and whispered, "Everything makes sense now." When she said that, something inside me eased, something tight, something lodged. The kind of hurt that only truth can finally soften. We sat there a while longer, letting the quiet rest between us, not empty, but gentle. Outside, the sky shifted from pale peach to soft gold. Morning fully arrived. Light pooled through the windows, draping the room in a peace I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, Maya looked at the journal again. She opened it to the very last page, the one where her childhood handwriting had trailed off into that sentence meant for this moment. "If I ever forget who she really is, to remind me." She touched the words lightly, like they were a prayer she'd finally remembered how to say. "You did remind me," she whispered, "even after everything." And then she looked up, eyes steady for the first time. Grandma, can I stay for a while? Her voice was small, hopeful, afraid of my answer, even after everything we'd shared. And Lord, my heart, my old, worn, stitched together heart. I felt it swell in a way I hadn't felt in far too long. She wasn't asking for a room. She wasn't asking for help. She was asking for home, for belonging, for something she'd been starved from without realizing it. I reached out my hand across the coffee table, the same table where she'd played with dolls, spilled juice, colored outside the lines. She took my hand immediately, tightly, as if letting go would undo everything. Yes, baby, I whispered. You can stay. Her shoulders dropped with relief. Her breath steadied, and in that soft exhale, I heard the sound of healing. Not perfect healing, not instant healing, but the kind that begins the moment someone steps out of a lie and into the truth. We didn't hug dramatically. We didn't cry more tears. We didn't make promises that would crumble under pressure. We just sat there, hand in hand, morning sun warming our faces. Quiet justice isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives gently, in a knock at sunrise, in a journal returned to its writer, in a granddaughter remembering who she always was. And it leaves something behind.
Peace.
When Maya finally settled back into the sofa, head resting on the cushion like she used to when she was little, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. Love doesn't disappear. It waits. Patiently. Quietly. Somewhere inside us. It keeps glowing until someone finds their way back to it. And this morning on my porch she did. If this story touched you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop a single word in the comments. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.